me, there seems like barriers to connections that contributes to loneliness. And as we approach to the issue of connections, to visible barriers are the distance things, are the physical separations between us. But there are those invisible barriers, which I think is in forms of cultures. Fantastic.
I'm yours.
Okay, so
Okay.
thanks for being here, Pam, in this interview. So we'll start with our first questions.
All these faces in front of you and you're lecturing, you know when you've lost them, because all of a sudden the students are, all you see is this, the top of their heads.
Right.
And then you could do something, you can say, okay, we're going to do a play, or we're going to do an exercise, or now we're going to do a case together and get them back, and engage them back again. But it's very, very hard. I find that in teaching now, even though the students are there, but I'm not there, right? So it's very difficult I have a picture like as big as you're looking at me now, and there's 120 or 30 people in the picture.
Oh,
so,
I can imagine.
I'm there, my face is big on the screen, but I can't really see them, and it drives me crazy, to tell you the truth. It really does.
So for the experience part, we will certainly don't feel as same as we were like having you in the classroom. It's really different, but student can still learn from their own.
Yes, and students have to be more motivated too. I think that's the other thing. I think that students have to take it upon themselves to engage in the material. And that's difficult too, especially if it's in another language. I imagine you're reading more than you ever read before right now with the textbooks that you've been given, because they're huge, aren't they? And it's it's a big load.
We actually don't have those real books. We have those ebooks instead. So
it's difficult
reading a lot through computers.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so difficult trying to learn. It's like it's almost like a guinea pig. You're in a vacuum, right? There you are, and you're expected to do these things. And whereas if you were in class, you'd look around and say, Latifa, I don't get this. Tell me, what does it mean? I don't understand. Or how much are you studying for this test? How much do you think we need to really know? So it's very, very difficult.
That was hard for both of the parties, for teachers and for students.
Yes, it's true. It works both ways. I mean, we're trying. I think when we there's degrees too now. At the beginning, I think I was still teaching you. What was the last course that I taught you on? Was it stress? Did we do stress together online?
Stress.
Yeah. So when we were doing that, you were all in your own homes. Everybody was in your own living room, your own bedroom, and I was in my own room. And we had a course where when you got together in groups, you couldn't see each other. You couldn't physically be in the same area. You could go on to WeChat groups. Now that's a cold medium in comparison to sitting beside each other, looking at each other and trying to find out, so where do we start? What do we do? Who's going to do what? All those questions that come up. So that was probably the hardest at that point, because we were just learning about how do we do this. All of us had a big learning.
Right. So as a very experienced educator, how will you help people to get emotionally involved, other than what we just discussed, to like figuring your own habits, or like what are your things to do when you are not studying? Like, how do you help people to emotionally invest it into each other? Because we are now remote study, so we can't see each other, but we need to like make contact with one another.
Able to come back on campus. So they are on campus in China, that is, but I'm not. So it's a little better, just a little bit easier to connect, for the students too. So I think the experience you had there with JULC courses is the same as what you're having now, isn't it? With the University of Sydney, because you're sitting in your bedroom alone, and it is lonely. I understand that. I feel for you. Yeah, like you almost need, you need pep talks to each other, so what can we do this week to keep our energy levels and our optimism high, so that I'm glad that we started off with, so what are you doing? And you're doing your yoga and you're doing, obviously you need to do some things just to keep yourself mentally alert and mentally even. Yeah. Wow.
What is the model that works between you and, let's say, people B or people C?
Yes, right. Well, sort of the way that as I've mentioned now, what I'm doing is I have a room full of 120 to 140 students, and and Sophia is still the TA. So what we do is we arrange for groups to be done right away. Now this is not quite the same as for you when you're, but we'll talk about that, how that could be adapted. So the groups are random, and the groups get to sit together too in random, so that they're not all over the room. So they are, a group of 6 or 7, usually 6 are right together. So for my teaching plan, I'm still trying to get through the theory. I do maybe 15-20 minutes of theory, and then I'll stop and I'll have some kind of activity where the students either work together in pairs, or 3 and 3, or even as a group. Here's a problem, I'd like you to discuss this problem, or talk to me about what, for example, in CD, tell me what it is that you always wanted to be when you grew up, and tell each other about that. So they would be able to have a chance to start having some connection. Now, these people, again, it's different because they've been together now, except for the year in COVID when they were separated. They've been together in a classroom, in the big classrooms quite often, but I like to do something that's engaging. And then Sophia will pick randomly 2 or 3 numbers of groups, and then have them report. So what did you have to say about this? And then they and we and I have some rapport going on, and they're reporting to the class. Now, as you know, students don't like, oh dear, yes. Anyways, okay, so where were we now? We're talking about the second question, basically, engaging people, right? How to engage.
And you mentioned about something that I understand as a passive way of doing, like you sort of like put student in groups, and they have to know each other,
yes,
or
right,
else
yes.
they won't keep their progress going.
That's right. Yes. And yes, I was telling you about my experience working in the Bachelor of Arts Community Studies program for 24 years. And this was very small classes. The biggest one would have been 18, 9 and 9, 2 groups of 9, and having 2 seminar rooms and going from one room to the other room. But then doing the same thing online. Actually, I taught this course online as well. And students actually, they come up with a project. They go into the community and they try to make the community a better place. They do something to make this world better. So it's a fine course, and it's amazing. I mean, there's lots of academic theory that goes behind it as well. But the fact is, they're working together, and they need each other, and there's a synergy. The fact that when people are working together, if it's working well, then it's better than the sum of the individual parts. It's better, it's bigger, it's bolder, it's more creative, it's more effective. So from that point of view, groups are very powerful, and they work well. So, but you're feeling, I'm sure, now, you can be using, your professor is probably using groups to some extent, right, with you in classes. So if you look upon it from that point of view, then you can learn from each other. But having from a mental health point of view, just getting to know 5 people in your group well.
Something that you think will be a glue that like stick people together.
Yes, I think would be very helpful to actually vent a little bit, too, because you don't normally go into a work group and vent how you're feeling. But if you did have a chance for everybody just to talk about, so let's catch up with each other. How are you feeling this week on a scale of 1 to 10? How would you say that your emotions are? Are you, how is your cup? Is it half full? Is it quarter full? Is it 3/4 full? Things like that you could actually share with each other, and then maybe say, I really had a good week, and this is why. This is why I'm feeling so good. Yeah, share. Yeah, it would be helpful, I think. Yeah.
And that leads to my next question. Like, so from an adult point of view, from a wise person point of view, do you think socializing is like important in our life?
I do. I think it's very important in life, because I mean, whether you're an introvert or whether you're an extrovert in life, and there's certainly different approaches, to how much socialization people want in their lives. Whatever job you're doing, you're going to be in an area where you're working with people, or you're working for people, or your clients are your people there's always going to be people that you're relating with. And so the whole, the focus of socialization in school, I think, sets you up for being a better communicator, better empathizer, better leader, better listener, all of those things that are, so important in empathy and listening and communication, which serve you well, whether you're a colleague or whether, you're a boss, or whether, you're a peer or working for somebody. It's you can't get away from it. And families too, like we live in families, and families have, are a social group with bonding and glue. And it's no matter where you go, it seems like in different parts of your life, there's less people, perhaps, like our family is grown now, so Brian and I have an empty nest, so it's just the two of us at home, but still we get together with family when we can and grandchildren, and for things like important things like your anniversaries. So it seems like whether it's family or whether it's work or whether it's fun, whether you're doing things, going to yoga group or whatever, you're socializing. And so it's very important, and we're missing that. We're missing a lot of that right now with COVID too, and because COVID's forcing you to be at home, and like it sort of relates to what you were asking about loneliness. But puts us almost into a shell, like, because we're fearful as well. We're afraid we might get it, and we want to have this protection of having a vaccine or social distance, or
yeah,
so many things that we're lonely. I mean, and it's going to take a toll, I think, as a generation, and generations to come, because we've had to live through this. I mean, some people have gone through the Second World War. People are pretty old who have gone through the First World War, but we are having our own war now too. I think this COVID-19 is like a war, and yeah, it's going to make us stronger maybe, but it's also making us more insular, like keeping to ourselves more and keeping things in, and then who knows when they're going to go poof.
I think like COVID is actually giving us a chance for all of the human beings to actually take a step back and to pay attention to the relationship that in our daily lives. And it's not necessarily just pulling the curtains closed. It will actually giving us the opportunities that pay heed of all of the relationship. I mean, all of it relationship in your daily life, because that's something that keeps people alive, I think, because there are thousands of years of biology that tell us that human relationships are essential for our survival. Yet, I think now they're being edged out and diluted in quality by the nature of expensiveness of works in life. And also, by the way, we're using the technology and the mobility of the modern era, the phones, the mobile phones, plus COVID. That's something that we're facing, our generation are facing. It's going to be a problem, but we are going to find a way to solve this.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see what China's doing about the social media, and some of the articles I've read are looking at young people, young, like 13 and under, to 40 minutes or maybe 1 hour a day on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I think President Xi is really aware of the dangers of social media, and especially of just, people being lonely and then playing games and going into, sometimes people are playing games with other people. So I think that's a little bit of bonding going on there, but it's way more than what I ever had. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone until I was in my 60s, 70s, probably. So
actually learned from a research from Time, I think, that I think that happened in the 2016. So they said that the US teenager are facing a higher rate of suicide, or higher rate of loneliness, because they keep themselves with their computer games or mobile phones. And I think that's really bad.
I do too. I agree with you. My granddaughter is 13, Kaylee, and they have, they have a lot of different apps that I know nothing about, but they have kind of a living room or a party room. We'll all go into a party room, and they'll spend some time making these videos where they'll get all made up and do a dance or something. kind of thing. But there's so much judging that goes on, from one to another, and so much criticism, it seems, about, and bullying goes on too. So that these kids are not happy. They don't, I mean, they'd be much better off in a room with people, where they could just look at their eyes and be real people, be authentic people, it seems. So yeah, I think we have a lot of problems that we're going to be facing with our social media. I think President Xi is on the right track. I really do.
Yeah, I think he's doing his
By
job.
limiting it. Yeah, he wants people to get back to talking to people and to be empathetic.
Right. So the last question,
Right.
does the thought that the outbreak of the pandemic will lead the younger generation into deeper isolation, this kind of thoughts ever crossed your mind?
Yes, yes, and they're fearful. I'm very afraid of what's going to happen. What the future is going to look like. I think it's going to take a long time of no COVID before people get back to normal again. Maybe it'll happen quickly. Maybe it'll be very quick that people take off their masks and start having parties. But for a lot of us now, even though Brian and I are wearing masks all the time when we go anywhere, and we still, even though we're allowed, we won't go into a movie house or into a restaurant. We're very careful about that. I guess because we're older too, we know that we could be weak into this. But yeah, I'm afraid that this is going to have a deep effect on people, and I worry about it. I worry about it a lot. I don't know what the antidote to it is, because we're all in it together, and yet in some ways we're better off though, because at least we can, we do have social media. I can talk to my daughter 3 times a week, face to face, on messages, which is good, but it's not as good as being together, to cook a meal together, to brush your horse together, that's the thing. Yeah. How do you feel about it? Are you deeply aware of it and worried about it?
Yes, I think this probably take us to 2 directions. And the first one is that it will probably goes to somewhere really bad. I mean, it would deepen the loneliness and lead to what I think probably social recession. And in
That's
another way,
interesting. Never heard of that. Social recession, right? Okay, not an economic, but a social recession. Yeah,
right.
yeah, right.
Another way is probably give us times to think about it and starting to I don't know, starting to care, starting to redesigning your life patterns and probably recommitting to relationships. That's the bright side.
That is a good side. Yes, yes, right. Very nice.
Right. So I think this is it.
Very good, very good. I really enjoyed talking to you about this kind of thing. I guess, yeah, I hadn't thought so much about the deeper ramifications of it too. Sociology would be a really good field for you.
Really?
Right.
Bye. Take care.